Good morning, and thank you for joining me on the Path to Liberty. It's Wednesday, January 15th, 2020. Today, we're back to talking about Virginia. There is a big lobby day that's getting a lot of media and grassroots attention that's happening next Monday, the 20th. Some gun control measures are actually moving forward in the state legislature already. And over 100 localities have claimed the mantle of Second Amendment sanctuaries. I put that in air quotes. Those of you who've been paying attention to our work here at TAC understand why. But the big question I think a lot of people have is, how is this going to play out? No one knows for sure, but I'm going to share with you what I see as the most likely scenarios, 3 to 4 most likely scenarios, and how things are going to play out. First of all, before getting to that, my name is Michael Boldin. We broadcast live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Time from here in my home office and studio in downtown Los Angeles for the 10th Amendment Center. We have a bunch of live platforms on video, Facebook, YouTube, DLive, Twitch, and Periscope. We have archived video versions at bittubers.com, bitshoot.com, and Brighteon.com. Brighteon is my favorite of that bunch, but whatever platform is best for you, please go ahead and use those. We also have the audio-only podcast edition. A lot of reviews coming in on iTunes. Well, not a lot, but they're trickling in and they're consistent, and I'm very grateful for all the positive feedback over on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and elsewhere. Find all of our archives, all the ways to follow the show, all the ways to follow the TAC, our platforms, social media channels, the ways you can support us for as little as $2 a month through our membership program. You can also find probably how to get this Declaration of Independence t-shirt that I'm wearing today that I think is pretty cool. I haven't broken this one out in a while. Find all of the information and the ways to listen to all of our episodes over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/Path to Liberty. Again, 10thamendmentcenter.com/Path to Liberty. And saying hello to everyone out in the live chat. I'm always grateful for people who join me live. I'm very grateful for people who come to the archive as well. But to me, this is kind of a highlight of my day. I love doing these live broadcasts. I just did it as a test run mid-2018, and I just love doing this. So thank you for those of you who are able to make it, and thank you for those of you who send me feedback later on in the archives as well. Hi to Andrew Nappy, Ward Lawrence, 2326 Texas, or TX. Essential Freedom, Tyler B., Steve Jernigan, The Demon Nat, Dan Reed, Dan Warsaw Patriot, Justin Bayola, and everyone else. I'm so very grateful for you joining me. And Dan Reed says, I thought I would change things up today and try viewing on a different platform. That's pretty cool. Chris Regan, or Reagan, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but thank you for being here, Chris. You asked, I talked to my county commissioner and got a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution put on the ballot for March 10th. It's largely symbolic, but the publicity it will produce is a good thing. And this is kind of off topic today, but it's still on topic. My only recommendation on this, Chris, honestly, my recommendation is to not call it a Second Amendment sanctuary, because a lot of people have an impression of what a sanctuary does based on now decades of immigration sanctuary. So non-compliance, non-enforcement, not using resources to participate in enforcement. And I think calling these non-binding resolutions can be very effective to rally people to the cause. Maybe we could just call it a Second Amendment resolution or a gun right resolution, but I think calling it a sanctuary resolution gives people false impressions of what's being passed. But kudos to you to reaching out to your county commissioner and seeing it's on the ballot or on the docket for March 10th. I think you've got some time to work on that as well. Thanks for listening. Feel free to email team at 10th Amendment Center, Chris, or anybody else, team at 10thamendmentcenter.com, all spelled out. If you have any questions or want to talk about some strategies, hi to able-bodied, first time here, that's pretty awesome. But anyways, let's get to this. I'll keep rambling. Let's set the foundation for what's going on in Virginia. A few important points. A reminder for those of you who've been watching these episodes or listening to them on a regular basis, and some foundational things that I can't cover all of it today. I've done a lot of reporting and talking about this and blogging and writing and interviews. So I'm going to just give you some links to other episodes that you should check out. First of all, the resolutions being passed in Virginia and basically everywhere else are resolutions And if we have some Civics 101 understanding in Virginia and almost everywhere else, a resolution does not have the force of law. It is a non-binding political statement. And of course, non-binding political statements can be important, but a lot of people believe that the resolutions do far more than what they really do in law and in practice. I did an entire episode on this. It's one of the most watched and listened to that we've ever had here. We started out with maybe 100 listeners per episode when I first started, and I think this one is somewhere between 10 and 15,000, maybe 20,000, something like that. I don't want to hype it up too much. It might even be more. Virginia Second Amendment Sanctuaries, Rhetoric versus Reality from December 18th. I will put a link to that in the show notes. Those are published once we're done with the live show, about 30 minutes to an hour after that. 10thamendmentcenter.com/path to liberty. So first of all, the resolutions on their own, if nothing else happens, will do nothing to stop any gun control in Virginia or anywhere else, new, old, proposed, whatever. Passage of those resolutions will change nothing. That's an important piece of foundational information. 2, the sheriffs. I know a lot of people have been hearing things that they think they like. The headlines in the media, I think, are often very misleading. They're not telling the whole story, but a lot of people believe that the sheriffs are saying they're going to refuse to support gun control. But I did another episode on this just a couple days after that one, December 20th, 2019, top 5 reasons to not trust sheriffs. Virginia Second Amendment Sanctuary Edition. Short version, none of the sheriffs are really on board with the right to keep and bear arms. I mean, there might be some outliers, but as a general rule, there is no policy change where they are literally drawing a line in the sand and protecting you. So far, it is political rhetoric. So keeping these things in mind, a lot of people tell me, Boldin, everything's different this time. This is the line in the sand. Actually, a buddy of mine from high school, Tommy, said this to me just the other day. And I'm like, I keep hearing this from people. But you know what? It's not the first time I've heard this time it's different, with a group of non-binding resolutions being passed, dozens to hundreds of them, either in one state or around the country. And I covered that in some detail on my December 30th episode, and Ask Me Anything episode on Virginia Second Amendment Sanctuaries. I heard this time it's going to be different the last time, and the time before that, and the time before that, and probably the time before that. So we've seen all kinds of resolutions against things like the Patriot Act, National Defense Authorization Act, indefinite detention, and even violations of the right to keep and bear arms over recent years, from 2004, 2012, and 2013 and beyond. And the resolutions without follow-up action have done nothing. And that leads me to the important question. What happens next? I'm not sure what needs to happen specifically, because what most people are opposing, unfortunately, I mean, in a way it's good, but unfortunately most people are only opposing new gun control. They're not really opposing the loads of gun control that have been on the books for a long time. Now, Virginia, as far as if we're grading on a curve, if we're just grading on its own, all states are some version of D- to an F. They do terrible on the right to keep and bear arms. Let's give them all an F. There's ways that we can grade this on a curve, and it's in comparison to a place like California or maybe New York State or something like that. Virginia is not nearly as bad currently, but there have been gun control measures on the books, some moderate to minor ones. I think they're all bad, really. I think they're all terrible, because as soon as you open a door, you give them a crack, that's when you're going to have problems. As soon as you allow them to do something that they shouldn't be doing, they will always build on it, whether it's in 1 year or 1 decade or 100 years. You can't turn a blind eye to any of this stuff. And all the gun control, I think, in Virginia violates Article 1, Section 13 of the state constitution, and we don't even need to touch the incorporation doctrine and the Second Amendment. So I talked about how this time it's different, right? But it's not. Well, maybe. It could be. I can't say one way or the other. The only prediction I make, and I think it's consistently right, is that when Republicans or Democrats run something, they're going to be violating your liberty. They might do it on some different issues, but they're always going to be bad. They're not good on the Constitution and liberty. So we've got this big rally day on Monday. Monday, January 20th. This is Virginia Citizens Defense League. This is something that they actually do really well. I have not been really kind to VCDL on their resolution, which I think is their model resolution for cities and counties is actually really bad on the right to keep and bear arms. But you can see that in one of the other episodes I mentioned. But on Monday, January 20th, it's Lobby Day. They point out this is not VCDL's protest day. I know a lot of people are seeing this as a big rally. I was actually going to call it a rally. I may have put that in the description, but I want to respect what they're doing here. Every single year, Citizens Defense League goes to the Capitol and does a lobby day, and a lot of people have never participated in one of these things. This is about creating pressure to either do or stop doing something in the legislature. It's one of the most important things that people can do locally. Go to the Capitol and show up. A lot of times we hear from state legislators that merely 10 phone calls can change a committee decision on a particular bill. It's a little different in this situation. We also saw something similar where they were trying to remove exemptions for vaccine mandates up in New York. Wherever you land on this issue, the establishment and the political party that in charge there, the Democrats, were fully on board with getting this done, but tens of thousands of people rallied in December, got them to delay the vote, and then on the last day of the legislative session on the 13th, they actually got the bill killed. So you can put a lot of pressure and change things. So maybe you don't like that, maybe you do, but what we can learn is that a lot of people, thousands of people showing up, can actually make people who want to do the wrong thing change their mind because they're afraid of the public backlash. So that can happen. And sometimes you only need a couple of people to flip the switch to make things different. And in a place like Virginia, where it just turned blue for the first time in a long time, and the majorities are actually pretty narrow, you only need a few to change their vote on something to actually stop it. You can slow down the process. There's a lot of parliamentary tricks that can be done to kind of slow down the process and get them to pass as little as possible to nothing. So first of all, there's this lobby day. And this is scenario one. This is what they have to say about their lobby day. This was their email. I'm not sure what date they sent this, but just sometime over the last few days. They say lobby day is about, well, lobbying. And they're trying to make a point that don't go there to rally, don't go there to cause problems or ruckus or bring up other issues. This is something we've been doing for years to try to stop gun control. And that's the only thing that they want to do. Now, if that was really their message, that they were literally trying to stop gun control, I would be fully on board with what they're trying to do. But their first paragraph tells us something different. And let me read this to you. Lobby Day is about, well, lobbying, sending a message to the General Assembly and to the governor, attorney general, and the lieutenant governor. That message is simple. And here's the money quote, guys. No more gun control that in any way, shape, or form negatively affects law-abiding gun owners. Bills that go after criminals or bills that are beneficial to gun owners are fine. This message is incredibly bad. And in fact, it is so problematic that I would put the blame on this kind of message for the amount of gun control we probably are facing today. So many people who claim to support the right to keep and bear arms are okay with what they see as gun control that doesn't negatively affect law-abiding gun owners. So let's set aside the idea that most gun laws, most criminal laws on the books shouldn't even exist in the first place. So many people, hundreds of thousands of people have been arrested and put in jail and given criminal records for unconstitutional laws that shouldn't have been passed in the first place. And now that they have a felony charge, now they're a criminal, and now it's okay to go after the non-law-abiding citizen. So that's real problematic on its own. But then keep in mind, they're talking about only this is basically the NRA message. The NRA message is enforce the laws on the books because they go after criminals. We'll support this over that. We just don't want it to be worse than it is now. But if you think that you're only going to get legislation that's going to negatively or not negatively affect law-abiding gun owners, or just go after criminals, you're going to be really, really disappointed in the long run. If you allow them an inch, if you allow them a millimeter to pass gun control measures to, quote, go after criminals, someone in the future is going to use that precedent to expand it to redefine who qualifies as a criminal. Maybe a, quote, law-abiding gun owner in the future is a criminal, so that law can be used to go after them. Who knows how they're going to expand this? We have many examples in modern times, in U.S. history, about how we were promised that something was only going to be used in a very narrow scope ends up being a monster today. The income tax is maybe the greatest example. We were promised that this was only going to be a tiny percent tax on the richest of the rich. That's it. And it was going to be an emergency, temporary, wartime measure. And if you told anyone today that the income tax was only going to affect the richest of the rich, no one else was going to ever have to bother with it at all, and it was going to go away in like 1919 or something like that, we'd all be laughed out of the room. So this is a great example. We were also told that the Patriot Act and NSA spying was only going to be used for terrorists, just like they're saying bills that go after criminals are okay. We were also told that gun control, for example, we go all the way back to federal gun control in 1934, the National Firearms Act, which shouldn't exist in the first place either. We were told that was just going to be used to deal with the bootleggers and the prohibitionists, or the mafia. It was going to go after Al Capone for using Tommy guns and things like that. So this is a very, very bad message, and I think we have to push back on this, even when it comes from people that we should see as friends. I would consider Virginia Citizens Defense League. Overall, in the big picture, I would think that the CDL, NRA, and others should be allies. But if we really want to stand up for the right to keep and bear arms, we have to oppose all gun control. I mean, mind you, let's say they're talking about going after criminals. There are tons of criminal laws on the books. You can prosecute someone for their criminal act, merely possessing a firearm accessory, or ammunition is never a crime. What you own, what you consume is never a crime, really, if we're talking about something morally. But yet, this type of thing, you're opening the door to that, and it's going to be expanded. And I think the history of gun control in the United States in the last 100 years proves that to be a very dangerous approach. And of course, what did Samuel Adams say about it? We posted this on our Twitter and social media accounts this morning. This was him writing as Candidus in the Boston Gazette, October 14th, 1771. Let us remember that if we suffer tamely a lawless attack upon our liberty, we encourage it and involve others in our doom. And I would say this message, that no more gun control that negatively affects law-abiding gun owners. You don't need that caveat. It suggests that some gun control is okay. It's not just a suggestion when they say bills that go after criminals or bills that are beneficial to gun owners are fine. You know what the government should be doing regarding firearms? Absolutely nothing. They should get the hell out of the way, let people do their things, and if someone does something bad with a weapon or anything else, a bad check, whatever, there are ways to prosecute people for violence and fraud already. Stopping people from defending themselves isn't the path forward. So I would go with Samuel Adams on this in a heartbeat. Look, man, the idea that some gun laws, because they go after the bad part of society, are okay, this is tamelessly suffering a lawless attack on liberty. And then we are encouraging it, we are certain to have more and more. And again, this is the type of thing that has grown gun control for a long time in this country. And again, let's say you don't like some of these people because they're involved in the drug industry, illegal drug trade. So hundreds of thousands of people per year, I think it maybe peaked around 700,000 or 800,000 people per year, had been arrested around the country for marijuana charges. Now, someone buys a plant or grows a plant and sells a plant and never does violence to anyone else. You may not like that person. You may think that they're making a bad choice or an unhealthy choice. But if they're not committing violence or fraud, they're not ripping people off, they're just doing honest black market business, which it's not as much black market as was anymore, they may be listed as a felon. And you may think that they're a bad person for doing this. And then maybe they shouldn't be allowed to have a firearm. But that's attacking their rights. And as Thomas Paine put it, he said, "He that would make his own liberty secure must guard even his enemy from oppression. And I don't think any of us are going to see a pot dealer as our enemy, but maybe you do. But Thomas Paine said you should protect their liberty, their right to keep and bear arms, certainly in this specific case. So that's scenario one. Virginia Citizens Defense League gets exactly what they want. That is some kind of gun control, or gun control that only goes after criminals. And I would say that is opening the door to something far more dangerous in the future. So we'll keep an eye on that, of course. Scenario two is that maybe that there's just no change at all. Maybe the lobby day is going to really put a lot of pressure on people. We were surprised at what happened in New Jersey on the vaccine mandate exceptions that would affect around 14,000 kids in New Jersey. A lot of parents and activist groups came out and opposed this, and this was certain to pass, and it didn't. So this looks certain to pass, all these gun measures, and I'm going to get to a list of them in a moment. But so many of these gun measures look certain to pass. But who knows? We don't know. The lobby day is very important. It's very important for people to go there peacefully and focus on trying to kill the legislation. That is what's going to be effective. All the other issues, and this is where the Citizens Defense League is very good. They actually point out the lobby day is a peaceful event about gun rights and nothing else. Even though I disagree with their kind of half-assed support of gun rights, I agree with their approach here. Their strategy is actually incredibly good, and we have something to learn from them, and we should pay attention. He said, we are not there to have arguments with the other side. They lobby, we lobby, and never the two shall meet. And we are not there to push any other agenda. Our focus is on protecting our right to keep and bear arms, period. This is not about flags, statues, history, etc., just guns. So go there and create the pressure that's needed. And if you stay focused, and if thousands of people stay focused, there is a chance, even if it's very unlikely, there is a chance to stop some of this legislation. So maybe this will work. Now, I do think it's very unlikely that it will, but it's possible. Now, mind you, we're monitoring, it looks like 26 pieces of legislation. I've pulled up a list here. I will include that in the show notes for the 2020 session. I got this from a local news site. There seems to be one or two missing. It doesn't look like they compiled it. They just used a search on the legislative information system over at virginia.gov. But you can start down from HB 72 up to HB 1080, SB 13, the one that a lot of people are watching. SB 16, we heard, was killed. So one of them is already dead. I'm not sure the reason for it. I mean, it's not technically dead. That's SB 16, the assault weapons, assault firearms. It's such a horrible propaganda name to call weapons assault weapons. Assault firearms and certain firearm magazines, prohibiting sale, transport, etc. Man, the etc. should be scary. And penalties. That's SB 16. This was stricken at the request of the patrons. So whoever sponsored this bill, it looks like Richard Saslaw. Wow, what a good guy. He sponsored this bill and decided to pull it. And then that goes for a vote in the committee, and the Judiciary Committee voted. I mean, if a patron says, I'm not going to run this bill, maybe it was due to backlash. Someone might have some better insight who's watching that more closely, but SB 16 is dead. Now, a lot of people I've seen actually are like really excited, like, oh, things are working. But keep in mind, these people are not stupid. They may be evil, but they are not dumb. There is already a companion bill in the House, the exact same language as SB 16 to try to push it through the House. That's HB 961. And that doesn't even show up on this list that I got from the local news. HB 961 is not there at all. But if you search the text, assault firearms, that's what they call them in Virginia, you'll be able to find this. And this hasn't even been assigned to committee yet. And the way that the process works is the bill gets filed, then it gets assigned to a committee, then the committee has a hearing and a vote on it. Then if the committee passes it, it goes to the full chamber. In this situation for House Bill 961, that would be in the House. Then the House has a constitutional reading. They will generally vote to dispense with that. And then they have multiple debates on it. People will probably try to offer, if anyone is really smart on the Republican side, they will offer literally thousands, and they should do thousands of technical amendments, changing a term, changing a comma, adding a definition over and over and over. If this is the hill to die on, you could tie up the entire legislative session with this process. Now, maybe someone has a parliamentary maneuver, and I don't want to give anyone ideas on the other side. Maybe someone has a parliamentary maneuver that can get past this and get a vote through without being able to stop debate or something like that. But there are things that I've seen both sides do on things like this. But certainly one of the most effective ways to slow down legislation, we've seen it used against us many times. Missouri, I've talked about Missouri, the Missouri Second Amendment Preservation Act, which we've been working on for years. It's a sanctuary state, really, for guns in Missouri, or the foundation to create one. We got it passed in both chambers in Missouri. And one guy in the state Senate there who was pretending to be pro-right to keep and bear arms introduced some technical amendments to the legislation on the Senate side at the very end. And then and he makes a really good explanation. Well, we should really consider this. And then it's much easier to run out the clock because it has to go back to the other chamber. They have all kinds of pieces of legislation that still has to be considered. And then they weren't able to vote on the amended version from the Senate in time to get the job done. So these are parliamentary maneuvers that can be done by opponents of this gun control onslaught, I guess, in Virginia. But we have to keep in mind that they've got tons of bills that are ready to go, and they can just keep blasting them through. They can add this stuff as amendments. We really have to kind of keep an eye on this very closely. Some legislation has already passed out of committee. Senate Bill 69. Let me go back to this list. They're on the Senate side, it looks like. Senate Bill 69, Senate Bill 70, Senate Bill 40. Let me see if I can pull this one up and get a actual, that one's 69. Handguns, limitations on purchases, has already passed out of the judiciary. They had a committee substitute, so they've already made some modifications. I have not looked at them closely. Maybe they are smart on their strategy to get done what they want to get done. Maybe not. I don't want to tip my hand on my thoughts on that. I'm not going to give them any advice on how to do the gun control properly. But I haven't really looked at it. They've incorporated another piece of legislation, SB 22, into the bill, and that already passed 9-5, probably just partisan lines. And so that yesterday on the 14th, the constitutional readings dispense that passed 39-0, basically everybody's saying, let's get to the debate on this. And we'll see how that plays out. That was Senate Bill 69, Senate Bill 70, exact same situation, except they incorporated another bill, SB 12. That's probably what the amended or substitute committee substitute is. And the same process. Yesterday, the constitutional readings were dispensed by a vote of 39-0. And then SB 240, this looks like the red flag bill. Removal from persons posing substantial risk of injury to himself, etc., and penalties. Same vote in the Judiciary Committee in the Virginia Senate, passed 9-5, and we should be expecting some massive debates and coverage on these in the next few days and weeks. And mind you, none of the House legislation has gone through this process yet, so it's possible that they're kind of watching to see how it plays out, to learn where the pitfalls are and what the opposition has to say, so you have to be really smart. So scenario 2, with all my blabbing, is maybe, because there's so many things being pushed and there's so much attention on this, maybe, and I really hope this is it, maybe there's no change. Now, in the long run, I still don't think that might be a temporary win. I still think it's a long-run loss unless people, after defeating this, realize that they're going to come back and do it again, but then also have to start pushing back further. There's a great quote from Samuel Adams that I just don't have handy, but it popped in my head. Basically, he was saying, this is around 1770-something, he says, rather than sit down happy, proud with our accomplishments, this is what our enemies want. What we're facing today, and I'm paraphrasing, requires consistent, utmost perseverance and pushing on for more. Never stop until you get it all done. So even if they can get all these bills killed or passed in a way that render them totally ineffective in practice, which would be also a partial win, but let's say they get them all killed and nothing changes, they have to push on for more, because if they don't push on for more, that's exactly what the enemies have, and they're going to keep pounding away until they get this stuff through. Scenario number 3, I think, is a lawsuit, and I really believe that the organizations, the grassroots leadership This is what they want. They want to create a scenario. I think they actually really want to stop anything new from coming. They don't really want to stop anything that's already on the books, and they seem to have no concern, especially calling all of these counties and cities Second Amendment sanctuaries. You would think the Second Amendment to the federal Constitution would be important to them, and that federal gun control that's been on the books from 1934, 1968, 86, 88, and the bump stock ban of 2018, you'd think all of these things would be an issue too, but they don't seem to be having. Obviously, I think I understand that the threat is so new and it's right in your face and you have a chance to stop something new, so I understand why the focus is on the state-level gun control, violating Article 1, Section 13 of the Virginia Constitution. But if you call your locality a Second Amendment sanctuary and you don't take action against federal violations of the Second Amendment, which have been on the books for 70, 80 years, you're a fake. So they have to keep pushing forward on that. But I do believe that many of the organizations pushing for this really want to see a lawsuit. And they want the federal government to come in. So let's say they pass something, Virginia passes something that goes beyond what Virginia Citizens Defense League defines as acceptable or palatable gun control. And again, they want no more gun control that in any way, shape, or form negatively affects law-abiding gun owners. We don't want anyone defining that. I would say all gun control shouldn't exist. All gun control negatively affects not just law-abiding gun owners, but all gun owners. It also negatively affects all people who don't own guns. I don't own a firearm. Maybe I shouldn't say that because now I'm less safe in my own home. I don't own a firearm. I've never owned a firearm. In general, I kind of suck. I'm trying to learn. I go to a range every few months. I practice. I got a great lesson from Gary Marbett up from Montana Sports Shooting Association a number of years. This is a while ago. I also got another lesson from Michael Badnarik, the former Libertarian Party presidential candidate. To this day, he took me, my partner Sarah, and I to a range. We both got a 45-minute lesson with him for free. It was so nice of him. And to this day, anytime he sees me, he picks on me on how Sarah has much better grouping and much better natural skill than I do. But this is something I support. And even though I don't own a firearm, attacks on the right to keep and bear arms affect me. They affect liberty. And that's basically what Thomas Paine was having to say. You have to guard the liberty of everyone if you want to make your own liberty secure. I want the option. I want other people to have the option, even if I choose not to exercise it myself. That's the whole point. Unfortunately, most people who advocate for the right to keep and bear arms are just the gun owners, and the people who are against it are the non-gun owners. I want to be that person who's different, the person who's never had that gun, who doesn't own them, who isn't an enthusiast, but wants people to have the freedom. I'm on your side, absolutely. So where am I going with this? I think they really want to go for a lawsuit. If they get something that goes beyond this palatable, no more gun control that negatively affects gun owners or bills that go after criminals, if it goes beyond that, they want to create a scenario where the federal government, the federal judiciary is going to come in and save people. So they'll have something that creates a controversy. Maybe someone will refuse to participate. Someone will be a sacrificial lamb and create a controversy where they get arrested and prosecuted, and then they'll have a lawsuit. Or maybe one or two sheriffs will actually do what they're claiming they're going to do and refuse to enforce. Maybe they'll get removed from office, and then they'll have grounds to create a lawsuit. And the idea then is that the federal government, the federal courts are going to come in and save us. Personally, I don't ever want to look to the largest government in the history of the world to protect me from anything. They violate the right to privacy billions of times. They are the biggest gun grabbers in anywhere. The amount of gun control that comes out of Washington, D.C. is insane. The amount that they're spending, the spying, the asset forfeiture, the wars, they don't protect anyone's liberty. This is worse than going to Al Capone or the mafia to protect you from someone down the street. Going to the most dangerous government on earth to protect you is a bad strategy. James Madison warned us. Of course, he said dangerous powers not delegated may not only be usurped and executed by the other departments, But the judicial department also, we shouldn't trust them. They've been really bad on this. The so-called wins in like Heller, for example, they haven't stopped gun control. In fact, it just keeps getting worse. So this strategy of going to the federal courts to protect us, I think, is just ensuring that we get more and more gun control in the long run. Maybe that won't be proven for a few more years, but I think it already is today. And then, mind you, Thomas Jefferson put it this way, and this is for people who are trusting the judiciary of the United States. He says they are the subtle core of sappers and miners constantly working underground to undermine the foundations of our Confederated Republic. So don't trust the courts. I don't think they're going to do a good job on this. And I think even if something does go to the courts, at best, you're going to get more centralization of power, which in the long run is going to be really bad because someone's going to redefine things in the future. Or they're going to just say, you know, oh, an assault weapon ban, well, you know, as long as it's a partial ban and it's only for certain people, well, that's okay. And it's, again, cracking that door towards a total tyranny becomes wider and wider with every step that they take. Warsaw Patriot makes a great point. It's our job to keep our government in check, not view them as our saviors. And Brandon also says, I wouldn't trust Trump to protect my Second Amendment rights. And I'll say my right to keep and bear arms, just like Obama, Bush, Clinton, etc. They are all terrible. We have to stand for our rights, whether the government people want us to or not. That's why I think the so-called Second Amendment, the term Second Amendment sanctuary is terrible for many reasons. And you'll see that in some of these other episodes. But just for the sake of making it easy, I'll stop saying that as a caveat every time. The idea of Second Amendment sanctuaries is very good. How to implement that on a local to a state level is very complex, very difficult, nearly impossible. But at some point, people are going to have to say, you know, this time it's different. And I think in the long run, the way this is going to play out really gets down to, and this isn't necessarily another scenario, those are the three major scenarios. I think really the way it's going to play out is going to depend on how, I guess we'll say, smart, evil and smart, or evil and stupid the Democrats in Virginia are. And I'm not one of these guys that are like, the Democrats are the problem, because I think the government is the problem. And it doesn't matter if it's run by Democrats or Republicans. And I think Republicans at best have been very complicit in this. And in fact, I think they've been just as bad on so many things. But that is a distraction. So the government is the problem. What happens next really depends on what the Virginia legislature passes. We can look to the response to the SAFE Act in New York from 2013 as a very interesting example. And again, I'm not trying to give the opponents of liberty any insight on how to get the job done, but the SAFE Act used really bad strategy. And compliance, I've seen conflicting reports. PolitiFact claims that there's been plenty of compliance and enforcement on this, even where the numbers show it's low. But one of the biggest supporters of gun grabbing in New York has done a full-length treatment going through this. And he even himself talks about how compliance with the New York SAFE Act is incredibly low and explains why. It's primarily the approach in the legislation. So if they pass legislation that really is just unenforceable because strategically they did a really bad job, that would be one thing. And then it becomes very easy for people to refuse to comply. But if they beef up the state police, if county sheriffs refuse to participate, which I don't really expect to happen in any large numbers, but let's say it all happens. Maybe they'll beef up the state police. Who knows? The local police might do it as well. So we'll see how it all plays out based on what the Virginia legislature is doing. So far, they aren't, I mean, they're being really aggressive, but things haven't moved super, super fast. We're seeing a couple of bills moving forward, some amendments, one bill pulled in the Senate, a companion bill then refiled in the House, and we just have to watch how it plays out. Basically, people have to have the mindset that all gun control is bad, not some of it, because as soon as you give them that opening, you're screwed. Anyways, I want to take a look over in the live chat. Gerard Hay asks a great question. Can the Federal Reserve Act be nullified? If you go to our YouTube channel, which you're on, you can search Federal Reserve. We've done a number of episodes and short videos on the Federal Reserve. Camille Patterson says, any legislator that infringes on the Second Amendment is declaring war on the citizenry. I don't want to necessarily say it's violence up in Maine, but it certainly is treason on the rights of the people. That's how St. George Tucker. And I also want to point out, and this seems to keep coming up, it's not an attack on the Second Amendment. It's an attack on your liberty. If the Second Amendment didn't exist, you would still have the natural right to keep and bear arms. It is our birthright to be able to defend ourselves, our family, and our property, our home, from whatever. And the founders actually saw the right to keep and bear arms as a way to keep in check the warfare state. They wanted the average people to have military-style weapons, a capability in the general public, so you wouldn't have to have large standing armies, because as James Madison put it, armies and debts and taxes are the known instruments for putting the many under the domination of the few. Anyways, I hope you guys found this interesting. I hope it was fun to watch. I hope it was educational. That's the most important thing. I don't know exactly what's going to happen next. My hope is that something very positive happens. I'm pretty cynical because I've been through this. This time is different many times. I know many people coming to this movement for the first time are very excited. I want you to stay excited, but I also want you to stay excited and focused if you don't get what you want today. Because as Thomas Jefferson told us, the ground of liberty is to be gained by inches, and we got to take every bit and piece that we can claw. We're talking about the most powerful government in the history of the world, and they're subservient. They shouldn't be corporations, but the state governments really act as corporations or counties for the federal government. We're talking about a huge beast here, and we have to keep clawing back no matter what happens. I wish everyone in Virginia and around the country the best in their effort to stand up for the right to keep and bear arms, but please focus on the right to keep and bear arms being complete, being all expanding, not just some laws are okay and then some laws are not. That is a horrible approach that leads to more problems in the long run. Anyways, thank you for spending time with me today. I'm very grateful. Make sure to smash that like button. Continue leaving comments if you support the show. Feel free to send me suggestions for programs or questions to team@10thamendmentcenter.com. And of course, if you really want to kick in and support us, our membership program, you can see this membership card that we give out to, annual, lifetime, and 5-year members. We also have a monthly program that starts out as little as $2 a month. You can find that over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. Again, thank you for joining me today. Have an awesome day, and we'll see you next time here on the Path to Liberty.